What was the world really like before the Great Flood? It was a time when the earth was lush, life seemed to thrive endlessly, and people lived for centuries. But beneath the surface, there was also great corruption, mysterious giants, and a close connection between the divine and human realms. From gigantic plants and animals to a unique water cycle, the pre-flood world was like nothing we know today. In this video, we'll explore what life might have been like before the floodwaters came. Now let's look at some of the fascinating details that shaped this ancient world. Lush and fertile landscapes. The world before the Great Flood was a place of unbelievable beauty and richness. The Bible speaks of the Garden of Eden as a paradise, filled with vibrant plants, trees, and flowers. This description gives us a glimpse into a time when the entire earth was likely thriving in the same way. The ground was fertile, and life flourished without much effort. The air was clear, and every living thing found exactly what it needed to grow and survive. The climate was gentle, offering perfect conditions for plants and animals alike. Forests stretched far and wide, filled with massive trees, and the fields were lush with greenery and flowers. Rivers flowed freely, providing water to all corners of the land. There were no barren deserts or harsh environments. Instead, everything seemed to be in balance. This natural world, full of life and abundance, was a perfect environment for humans, animals, and plants to thrive. The pre-flood Earth was a world of thriving ecosystems and rich landscapes, far different from what we see today. Longevity of human life. The people who lived before the Great Flood experienced lifespans that seem unimaginable today. Many individuals reportedly lived for hundreds of years, with Methuselah being one of the most well-known examples, living to an astonishing 969 years. This long life wasn't just a rare occurrence, it was the norm during that time. The Earth was believed to be in a perfect state, freed from many of the health issues we face today, allowing people to live much longer. One of the main reasons for this remarkable longevity is thought to be the pristine environment. The Earth before the flood was described as pure and unpolluted, with clean air, fresh water, and rich soil that supported healthy food. Diseases that are common today likely didn't exist back then, allowing humans to live without many of the struggles we face now. People were able to enjoy longer lives filled with vitality, energy, and health. This extended lifespan also meant that knowledge and wisdom could accumulate over centuries, allowing people to pass on what they learned to future generations. It was a unique time in human history, where the conditions of the Earth made extraordinary longevity possible. Advanced civilizations. Before the Great Flood, there are theories that suggest human civilization was far more advanced than we often imagine. Some believe that these early societies had a strong understanding of agriculture, building techniques, and even metalworking. The Bible itself mentions cities, farming, music, and metalworking, pointing to a time when society was already well developed and organized. These civilizations may have built impressive structures, cultivated vast lands, and had specialized knowledge in various fields. People were not just surviving, they were thriving and innovating. They knew how to grow crops efficiently, create beautiful music, and shape metals into tools and weapons. This shows that life before the flood wasn't primitive, but advanced in many ways. These societies likely had their own systems of trade, culture, and governance. Cities were hubs of activity, where people worked in different trades and exchanged ideas. The knowledge they had would have set the foundation for much of what we know today. It's fascinating to think that, despite the passing of time, the world before the flood may have been full of innovation and creativity. Moral and social corruption. Even though civilizations before the Great Flood were advanced, they were also filled with moral and social decay. The Bible tells us about a world where violence and wickedness became widespread, affecting nearly every part of society. People strayed from the path of righteousness, and corruption took over their hearts. This wasn't just limited to individuals, it impacted entire communities and civilizations. One of the most troubling aspects was the presence of the Nephilim, described as a race of giants born from the union of divine beings and human women. Their existence added to the chaos and disorder that plagued the world. The Nephilim became symbols of the unchecked power and corruption that was spreading everywhere. This breakdown in morals and ethics was a major reason why the earth was destined to face the flood. The wickedness had reached such a level that it could no longer be ignored. The world needed a reset, and the Great Flood became the divine response to the overwhelming corruption that had taken hold of humanity. It marked the end of an era defined by moral collapse. Unique hydrological cycle. The world before the Great Flood is believed to have had a completely different water system from what we know today. Rather than rain falling from the sky, the earth was watered by a mist that gently rose from the ground. This unique system kept the land lush and fertile, providing the perfect environment for plants to grow and thrive. This mist likely played a key role in sustaining life. It created a balanced climate where everything was in harmony, and there was no need for heavy rain or storms. The gentle watering of the earth contributed to the rich, vibrant landscapes that characterized the pre-flood world, and it might have even helped people live longer, healthier lives by maintaining such ideal conditions. The absence of rainfall as we know it today also meant that the environment was stable and predictable, with no sudden changes in weather patterns. This hydrological cycle was one of the unique features of the antediluvian Earth, helping to maintain the balance of nature in a way that is hard to imagine now. It was a peaceful and nurturing world before everything changed. Gigantic flora and fauna. In the world before the Great Flood, there are theories that suggest plants and animals were much larger than what we see today. The perfect conditions of the pre-flood Earth, rich soil, ideal climate, and abundant resources, might have allowed plants to grow to enormous sizes and animals to thrive on a scale that would seem incredible now. Fossil records and ancient writings hint at the existence of these giant creatures and massive plant life. Imagine trees towering higher than anything we know, with branches so thick they could support entire ecosystems. Animals, too, may have roamed the earth in sizes far larger than we can picture today, benefiting from the lush and resource-rich environment. This wasn't just a world of small creatures and plants, but one where everything grew to immense proportions. These gigantic species could have been part of a unique balance that existed in the pre-flood world, thriving in ways that no longer seem possible. The conditions allowed life to flourish on an extraordinary scale, creating an earth filled with massive plants and creatures that are hard to imagine in our modern world. Spiritual and supernatural elements. The world before the Great Flood was not just physically different. It was also a time when the spiritual and supernatural were closely intertwined with everyday life. The Bible describes the presence of the Nephilim, giants born from the union of divine beings and human women. This suggests that the boundaries between the natural and supernatural worlds were much more fluid back then. People in the pre-flood world might have experienced the supernatural in ways we can hardly imagine today. There were interactions between humans and divine beings, creating a world where the mystical and the ordinary existed side by side. However, this closer connection often led to corruption, as these interactions weren't always positive or beneficial. The spiritual elements of that time were both fascinating and frightening. They played a significant role in shaping the world, but they also contributed to the moral decay that ultimately led to the flood. The relationship between the divine and human realms was complex, filled with both wonder and darkness, marking an era when the supernatural was a visible and influential part of life. As we reflect on the world before the Great Flood, it's clear that it was a time of both beauty and corruption. If you want to hear more intriguing stories from ancient times, make sure to subscribe to Holy Stories and hit the notification bell. We'll bring you more captivating tales from the Bible and beyond. Stay tuned and don't miss our next story.